Good. I'm so happy. Good morning. My name is Mallory, and I'm from Boston. And I'm so honored and happy to be here, and so excited to eat another one of those biscuits. To be honest, I'm gonna do butter. My game plan's butter. So I'm the co-director of an organization called Families for Justice as Healing. That's right. And we are dedicated to ending the incarceration of women and girls, period. All of us, freeing all of us. And like all of you, we also recognize that when the men in our lives, our loved ones, gets locked up, it's women and girls who are at home holding our houses and communities together. We're paying bails, we're paying bills. So we're fighting to end the incarceration of everybody, right alongside all of you. My big sister and my mentor is, I don't know if you've heard of this woman. Her name's Andrea James. I'm blessed beyond measure to learn from her every day, and how she has guided me and kept me in the work and brought me into the sisterhood. And I'm also just so thankful for all of you and the ways that you've nurtured me, personally and politically and professionally, and how we show up for each other and love up on each other every time we're together. And one thing I notice about all the council gatherings is how beautifully intergenerationally, we are together. So many big sisters in the room. Okay. So got it. We're just going to change things on the fly. That's how we do it. There's so many big sisters of mine in the room. There's so many little sisters, and I'm going to introduce some little sisters in just a second. And also I think about, yesterday I was really humbled to hear people speaking. Some of y'all have done, more time than I've been alive on the earth. And, it hurts my heart. And also immediately after that, I think about if we added up not just the time that we've spent behind the wall in this room, but we always think about the time that we add up that we've spent resisting and fighting back and freeing people. If we add that up, there's like millennium of resistance in this room as well. Just thousands of years that we've worked together. And also, like, I also think about the hundreds and thousands of years that we've saved through efforts like participatory defense to keep our people out of cages, period. So those numbers help to balance out the heavy amount of time that we've done as a room. So we're going to have Sisters Unchained talk for a little bit. We're going to have a speaker and we're going to have a panel. But before we do all that, we're going to have a partner of ours in Boston and a partner of some of you around the country, a researcher that we work with that's helping tell our stories to legislators, to public officials, that's helping put data behind our lived experiences and bringing to life the things that we've always known to be true. So I think I'm right in introducing her first. Is that right, Andrea? Yes. Okay. So please welcome to the stage from Human Impact Partners, Kim Gilhooly.
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm so honored to be here. I'm with this organization called Human Impact Partners, and we try to elevate the consideration of health and equity in public decision making. And so later on, actually the first session, I'm working with Mallory and Dawn to talk about primary caretakers legislation. We did a report about that, so come to that. But that's not what this is about. I was really honored to be able to, well, first a question for you guys. How many of you in your room, raise your hands high, went to a national town hall convening? All right. Very great. So all told, about 650 people around the country, women and girls and men, came to the national town halls on July 21st, 2018. And the title of the national town halls, Ending Incarceration of Women and Girls, How Do We Get There? So I was lucky enough and honored to be the person to actually bring all of the recommendations that you guys came up with together into this that is in your packets. If you've seen it, it says the same title. And so all I did was read all your amazing ideas, create some themes and sub-themes. And so what this is these are your words, your recommendations. This is how you guys think we can end the incarceration of women and girls. And what we're hoping is that you can use this as a toolkit, that you can go and you can say, here's the voice of people who are directly impacted, and this is what we think should happen. So I'm just going to breeze through this. You have it to read. I'll also say that, that is impossible to read. So I'll just kind of talk about what's happening. I will say there were 56 pages of recommendations. So summarizing it was really hard, and what was also incredibly difficult was to pick out a few, just a few quotes for each thing. So if you guys are interested, this is mostly about the themes that people talked about. If you're interested in all of the over 1,000 quotes, you can contact me, or you can actually go to the listserv and ask for it, and I will share all of those quotes. So the first question was, what alternatives or diversion programs would provide better outcomes for women and girls rather than incarcerating us? And so all told, people had the lines are really like the most just plain old number of responses. They aren't like proportions or percentages. They're just like the most people said. And the bottom line is so tiny. It was access to services and treatment. And so there were tons of specific ideas about the types of services and treatment that would provide better outcomes for women and girls. But there were also ideas about making sure they're trauma-informed, that there are one-stop shops, that they're gender-informed, and all of those. So amazing ideas. The second one is better systems of justice. So people had a lot of ideas about how to improve the systems of justice by decriminalizing all sorts of things that would provide for better outcomes for women and girls. And these are all ideas. These are all your ideas, and so all to say, you guys know how to decrease or end the system of incarceration here. Then the second and third are better accesses to education, better access to employment. And again, these are themes, and there are lots of really great ideas that come out, I think, a little better in all of the words here. Providing more community support, improving the programs that already exist in the community, and then preventing. I thought this was really interesting. People talked about preventing people from getting involved in the system of criminalization in the first place, and one really great idea was a couple people talked about self-esteem programs and self-empowerment programs for girls in schools. And then finally, access to housing came up in every single question of the 4 questions that were talked about. So just to remind you guys, there were 4 questions, and I'm just going to go through like really briefly each of the 4 questions that you all answered across the country. So the second question was, how can we become more economically empowered or empower others, other women? And again, the one that there were the most responses, so tiny. Training and education access. Sorry, I'm just looking over here. So training people in jobs that are actually good paying jobs, and providing access to education, decreasing the cost of education, and helping people get those jobs. Entrepreneurship, as you can imagine, came up a lot, but not just starting your own businesses, but getting training in entrepreneurship, and then seed funding also. In every single question, discussion about policy change came up. So as you can imagine, becoming more economically empowered would require decreasing or eliminating collateral consequences, and all sorts of other types of policy change, decreasing or eliminating fines and fees, that kind of thing. Better access to traditional employment, again, being trained and or having apprenticeships in traditional employment fields. That came up in addition to entrepreneurship. So women supporting women came up a lot. So supporting women, formerly incarcerated women who own businesses, supporting those businesses, and then women also kind of doing mentorships or bringing people into the fold during reentry. And then the final thing that came up a lot was, we can't become economically empowered without having access to vital resources like housing, childcare, transportation, those kinds of things. So that was that question. And then the third question was about how can we minimize damage that has happened during incarceration, so post-incarceration, and increase opportunities during reentry. And no surprise, during reentry, access to housing, jobs, social supports, and other types of supports was one of the things that came up the most about how can we minimize damage. Family reunification came up a ton, and all sorts of ideas about family reunification, like starting long before, while people are on the inside, making sure that people, instead of being torn apart, are being reunified, and then in reentry. And I think one thing that came up a lot is also what people need to minimize damage is to heal. And so having the resources and the support to be able to heal during reentry is important. A lot of times it came up the idea of educating people about the trauma that people experience while being incarcerated, and then letting the community know what people have gone through so that there can be a better welcome when people return. So a lot of people had really good suggestions for better reentry planning and better reentry systems. As you can imagine, I think in all of these questions, there were answers about how can you do a better job with this system. And so lots of specific answers about that. The fourth question was, how can we restore the right to vote for all people? And there are three main categories that came up. One is just organize, organize, organize. Organize, collaborate with other social justice organizations, and some very specific suggestions about petitioning and following the what other states have done in terms of, like, Florida was brought up several times about rights restoration. And then changing policy, electing the right people to government, and then holding elected officials accountable. And then the third main category was just like, let's educate ourselves what's going on in each state. Each state is different. And then let's educate the public about disenfranchisement. People don't know. So that's the four questions. This is your toolkit for policy change and for what women and girls who've been touched by the system of criminalization in this country say. And I just want to read one quote. There's a few quotes in here, but I think my favorite quote was had to do with what a better alternative would be than incarceration of women and girls. And the person just said, more love, less judgment. So, thanks. I think Mallory's going to come back up. Mallory.
I'm back. I was eating a biscuit. So can we give it up one more time for Kim Gilhooly and for all of the, it was like really powerful for us to all be together in our different cities, right? So we knew that the conversations were happening simultaneously. So that was a really beautiful part of the town hall. So thank you all again for all the organizing you did to coordinate that. Now we're going to go back to talking about us as an intergenerational sisterhood. So all my older sisters in the room, we have younger sisters in the room. So the council is dedicated to ending the incarceration of women and girls, right? And recognizing girls as experts of their own lives and in their communities. And there's some little sisters of mine that I'm very excited to introduce. So Out of Families for Justice as Healing grew a program called Sisters Unchained because young women recognized, daughters of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women recognized that they needed their own space, their own place to grow and develop, to share what they're going through, their unique struggles and strengths. And the women of Sisters Unchained did that in Boston. And so now there's an incredibly strong network of young women who have parents who have been locked up, loved ones who have been locked up, and they have a home to do healing and education with each other and creative expression. They also have a political home to do organizing with one another. So these young women are also leading advocacy efforts in Boston. They were a critical component of passing primary caretakers legislation in Massachusetts. And their stories and their language and their messages really defined our campaign there. And also they're beautiful and dope, and I love being around them. So without any further ado, I'm really proud to introduce two members of Sisters Unchained. Please give it up for Janasia and Andrea.
Hi, I'm Janasia, and I'm 17, and I've been a part of Sisters Unchained for 4 years.
Hi, I'm Andrea, I'm 17, and this is my first year in Sisters Unchained.
So, Sisters Unchained, basically, we're a program that consists of, it's a program basically where we hire girls ages 14 through 18. And the application process is basically if you've had somebody or loved or you looked up to that's been incarcerated, then you can join our program. And basically what we do, we try to create a sisterhood because we don't feel like young girls are really thought about when anybody that we love is incarcerated. We're not really focused on. It's usually the younger boys or the young men or the woman. Nobody focuses on us. So that's basically what we try to do. And basically our program, we consist of doing work inside of our community. We made a mural, we painted boxes and we made future boxes and posted them in different parts of our city. And we do different programs. We worked with this program called SLP, and it usually it works on mass incarceration, and we work on racism and colorism and different things in our community that affects us. So basically we just work to better ourselves and build a better foundation. And even though we're really a summer program, we stick together throughout the year, and we help each other with schoolwork, and we come together and we just do different things to support each other.
So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of what it did for me in the first year. So in the beginning of the year before I joined, I was struggling with self-love and beauty, and I wouldn't leave the house without makeup and stuff like that. And it just really taught me that I was loved, and it helped me love myself, and it helped me be able to look in the mirror without makeup and just understand the true beauty of Blackness. And I just thank them because they're really the sisters that I've never had.
And now we want to introduce Jayana. She was born in Buffalo, New York, where she spent the first 11 years of her life. Jayana has always been a grade A student and has maintained a 4.0 GPA even in 7th grade. Jayana has a passion for science. She loves to create new recipes for slime. She also started learning how to code websites and apps when she was just 11 years old. Her father has been teaching her how to code, and by February 2018, she launched her first app, Photo Patch. The app's purpose is to provide a simple way for children to send photos and letters to their incarcerated parents. Jayana, now 13, oh, she's 13 now. Jayana, now 13 years old, has been traveling around the nation to speak to youth and community organizations about her coding skills. The app she built and her passion to help children with incarcerated parents. Jayana currently resides in SWFL. I don't know what that is, sorry guys. But with her mother Regina and her father Anton, her younger brother Jaden, and her baby sister Nova. Now I would like to introduce Jayana.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys today? So my name is Jayana Patton. I'm 13 years old, and I live in Florida, and I'm part of the Photo Patch Foundation. So I just want to thank everybody for that invited me here. I'm just so glad to be here today, to be speaking in front of you guys, and it's really an honor. All the stuff that I've learned here and every stuff I've been doing here has been really amazing. I'm learned some really great stories and saw so much. It's been really amazing. So just thank you guys for letting me come up here to speak to you guys. Thank you so much. So I just want to talk about like how I've been here. I learned a lot of great stories. One, I have a couple that actually like stuck out to me. One of them I learned in a workshop that I did yesterday, and it was about this guy. His name was Timothy Batts, and he accidentally killed his daughter, and it was just sad to hear about that. But like not only that, like the process that he obviously had to go through with the whole thing, because they weren't judging him on the character he was today. They were judging him on his past and things he did in the past. So they weren't really caring about how good of a father he was and how he had custody of all his kids. They were more focused on what he did in the past. So I actually think that they said that he will be home anytime soon, so thankful for that. But I just feel like it's just not fair because they're not really treating people how they should be treated. And another story that really stuck out to me was Danielle Metz. I don't know if she's here today, but it was really great to hear her story. Hello. How she had to go to prison for such a long time for things that she didn't even do. And it's like, they don't treat us fair. They're not caring about like the person we are. They're not looking about who we are. Like if you were affiliated with these people or you knew these people, they don't really care. So good that she's home now. Congratulations to you. But her having to serve so much time for something that she didn't do, something that, wasn't even for her, just like not fair. So I actually want to like start going around and talking to children more about like how their race and gender can really affect, how they're treated. And I just want to like let them know, like keep them ahead, like you have to be careful with certain things you do, because one little mistake, you're going to end up in a bad place and nobody cares. It's just crazy. Like based on your race or your gender, they don't care. Like you did one little tiny thing, it's going to make you end up in a bad place. So I just want to start letting kids know to like just be careful, stay positive, stay around the good things, and don't get into anything bad, because that can lead you into something like really horrible. And like it's just crazy how like unfair they treat us. And many of you guys know, like once you get into like the prison system and stuff like that, it's hard to get out. And I know that because my father was incarcerated, and he was in jail for 8 years, and he's still like on parole and on probation. And it's really hard, and it's really hard to get out of stuff like that. So yeah, as I said, he was incarcerated, and my father went to prison when I was 3 years old. And at the time, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know what's going on. It was hard for my mom to tell me something like that, because it's not like at 3 years old I'm going to remember anyways. Like she's going to have me come back like 3 years later. So like, Mom, where's Daddy again? I'm not going to understand that at 3 years old. But once I did start understanding and we start communicating more, it was really great, but we didn't communicate as often as we needed to. And it was really hard to keep in touch with him. But the thing is, when I did, I always try to be uplifting about things. I was always positive. I was never down about my dad being incarcerated. I was never ashamed by it. I always just try to make him feel happy, make him feel better. To make sure, like, because the more negative energy and the more, that's not going to help anything. And as positivity, like, you stay optimistic about things, great things can come from it. So, that's what I learned. So, while he was in prison, he actually learned how to code. He has taught himself how to code, and he came up with the idea of a foundation called Photo Patch, which it allows children with incarcerated parents to send letters and photos and postcards to their parents in prison for free. And when they send this off to their parents, it all actually comes to us. We print it for them, we package it, and we send it to their parents. So we basically just make it more convenient for them to use, because it's hard to get stamps and pictures and stuff. I know that firsthand. My mom had a hard time, going to the post office. She had work, she had school, she had another kid, so it was hard for her to balance all of that. And, like, money was low. Where I came from, Buffalo, New York, there's not many opportunities there. it's not much there, and I'm not going to try to hide it. I mean, that's that. And my mom didn't, have enough money to always go get pictures printed and get stamps and get envelopes. So my dad obviously felt the same way, and he created Photo Patch Foundation just to make it more easier for children to communicate with their parents, because communication is key. The more communicated you stay, the better relationship you have, because me and my dad have such a strong bond now, and we still didn't have as much communication, but the communication we did have was powerful. But not everybody has that. So, we try to make it easier for them and more better so they can communicate, because that's what keeps a close relationship. I mean, we think that it's not a privilege for kids to be able to talk to their parents. It's a right. Children should have the right to talk to their parents no matter where they are, prison, anywhere. They should have the right to stay in contact with their parents, because that's their parents. No matter what they did, that's still their parents, and they still need to communicate with them to keep such a good relationship. So we have the website, and then 3 years when my dad was released last year, I decided to create an app for it, because I wanted to make it more convenient for children to use the system, because nowadays, 2018, children are more on their mobile devices and cell phones, and I just wanted to make it easier, have an app, so wherever they are, at a park, at a friend's house, anywhere, just take a picture real quick and you can send it off to your parents, with no problem. So I just wanted to make it more convenient for them, because I knew how hard it was for me to stay in contact with my parents. So, we just want to make it easier for them, because that's all that matters, is these children need to communicate with their parents, because if not, it can really keep them sad, and communication is just everything. So that's what happened. So November 2017 was when I first started to create the app. February 2018 was when I was actually finished, and then April 2018 was when it was launched into the App Store and everything. And I actually learned how to code from my dad when he was released from prison. He taught me how to code, and I'm always curious, I'm always curious to learn new things, and he taught me how to code, and I took it further than anybody expected. So, I'm just thankful for all of that, and I'm thankful for my dad, just not giving up on our relationship. And I'm just really thankful to be here today. I mean, if it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be here. And I just want to thank him for everything that he does for me, and that, he didn't give up on our relationship. He always stays strong, and I'm thankful that he decided to do something like this to help children. And it's really great. This whole experience, being a part of all this, is just really crazy. So I just really want to give a good thanks to my dad, because, he really pushed me. He really makes sure that I'm doing as best as I can. And, if it wasn't for him, I really wouldn't be here. So I just want to thank him for always staying positive and keeping me good and being such a great father to me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, babe. Thank you so much. That was awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andrea, for inviting me here. I love you guys. Stay positive. You can download my app. It's called Photo Patch. It's in the App Store. So if you want to download it, it's called Photo Patch. Thank you.
Wow. This is why we're here, right? Where are our youth, our young? This is why we're here. We can't be up here forever. We've got to build and invest in our young. And you've heard the phenomenal work of Sisters Unchained, and you've heard the phenomenal work of Gianna and Photo Patch, and you've heard from the voices of the young what is important. So we need to leave here remembering that they have spoken, because they are going to lead the way for the National Council. I want to introduce Gina. Gina, where are you? I was just looking. Oh, there you are. Come on up, Gina. We're on the last leg of the plenary breakfast session, and it's the best, beautiful, one of my most favorite panels that you're going to hear from is the family panel. Because again, without our families, I know without mine, my parents are here, my husband, my son, our oldest daughter. Without our families, I don't know, right? And so we're going to turn this over to Gina, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the work that she does with Essie and why this is so important.
Good morning. Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Okay, is this on now? Yes. Okay. Whew. Wow. Well, I just feel really moved this morning by all of the things that we just heard. This is a family affair. It should feel like family when we come together, because those are the kinds of bonds that we need in order to break down this system and build the world that we want to live in. Let me hear you say, free her. Free her. Free her. Free her. That's right. I was thinking yesterday, what an incredible thing it is that this is happening right now. That this convening is happening during this time when we see white men in the highest seats of power in this country squirming and lashing about, desperate to hold on to the power that they have had at the expense of women, and to be clear, the expense of black women for years. At this time, when we are convening, when we are strategizing, when we are building, they are scared. That's what I have been seeing. And the fight is not over, but they are scared because they see us about to win. They see us already winning in small and important ways, in ways that show that this is a movement, that they will not survive. And so I am so excited to be here because, it just feels restorative, it feels right, and it feels like destiny. I was asked, I'm the founder and executive director of Essie Justice Group, and we're this loving and powerful community of women with incarcerated loved ones based in Los Angeles and Oakland, California. And I was asked to share a little bit about the organization, but I'll do a little bit of that, but I'm very excited about the family panel that we're going to be bringing up, and so I'm going to keep my remarks somewhat short because I'd like to yield my time to as much of that as possible. But Andrea said a lot of nice things about me yesterday, and I know she was going to do that, and I don't really like being put on the spot, but Andrea's leadership, I feel lucky to have been able to see, and many in this room have been able to see, in the in-between spaces, in the dark and quiet moments, the non-glamorous parts, of leadership, of which there are so many. Her make all the right calls, the tough calls, the courageous calls, on behalf of the sisters inside, sisters on the outside, on behalf of black women, over and over and over again. This is a woman with so much integrity. And I just feel sad. I don't know, Andrea, where are you? Did you dash off to organize the next thing? Okay, she's out there. But I just have to say that, this organization, all of what we see today, it is here because of her and the amazing co-founding members of this organization who have persevered for a very long time to make sure that we could all be here today. So I just want to thank you all. And thank you. Yes, and I've been told parents are in the room, You know, yesterday I had some moment to spend with Andrea's mom, and I didn't realize when I was speaking to her, because I often do this, I'm always a little awkward. Like I'm from LA, where you're always supposed to know who everybody is, because they might be famous, and I like know who nobody is on a regular basis, and we talk to someone, be like, what? Oh my gosh, you're that person? That's that moment that I had yesterday with Andrea's mom. I was like, what? I've been hearing about you for years. Hey, mama. And I just, you know, I have to say, it's been a pleasure to meet Andrea's parents. It is so clear where she gains and generates her strength from and her wisdom. And I look forward to bringing you up in a little bit, Dr. Good. So we'll have more of your wisdom soon. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the impact of incarceration on family. And at ESSE, we are an organization, you know, we started as Women with Incarcerated Loved Ones. And when I got started with this organization, no one knew who I was talking about. Like, literally, I would say, I want to bring together women with incarcerated loved ones, and they would squint at me and say, oh, incarcerated women. And I would say, yes, absolutely. And mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, girlfriends, grandmothers of people behind bars who look like folks who love incarcerated women, women who come out after periods of incarceration who left their sisters inside, who have other people who they are paying for, who they are loving, and who they're going through this experience, who they are doing time together. And this was so beyond what people could comprehend and think about. I would have to describe with great detail the community. I had one person ask me, well, you know, this seems like a kind of a niche issue, kind of a niche, like a small group of people. And at the time when I got started in 2014, we did not yet have the number, the statistic that 1 in 4 women in the U.S. has a family member in prison. 1 in 4 women. For black women, nearly 1 in 2 has a family member in prison. And that's just prison. Our jail systems, our immigration and detention centers, immigrant prisons, women are everywhere, holding down communities and families in the midst of devastating incarceration policies. And yet, that labor, the opportunity cost, goes unseen. What we do at ESSE is, you know, we've begun to kind of think about this as, how is this connected to gendered oppression? How does this connect itself to a history of a lack of acknowledgement and lack of payment, lack of compensation or appreciation for women's labor? And we think those ties are important to draw, because I think that what we understand, what we know, is that incarceration is absolutely a function of racism, of a history of racialized oppression in this country, and it is also an extension of patriarchy and patriarchal values. And to not be acquainted with both root causes is to go about this work incompletely. When I was in my, I'm from LA. I started as an organizer, and I cared about all issues that impacted the black community. So I was working on all kinds of different things: school, some labor work, some criminal justice. But it wasn't until when I went to law school, and during that first year, someone I loved was sentenced to 20 years in prison, that it just locked the wind out of me. And I became, I dedicated my life to ending incarceration. That experience, despite being in what I thought was going to be a locus of power and solutions and opportunities to bring tools back to my community, I felt completely isolated and unable to speak about or figure out who to go to in that elite environment with this. I was essentially alone. When I left, and when I graduated, and I went on to practice at a public defense office in Harlem, New York, a black-led public defense office called the Neighborhood Defender Service of Harlem. I came to build a housing practice, which was to represent women who were being evicted because of some sort of criminal matter. And my clients were all are all mothers and grandmothers. Women, and I'll share this story because it was asked to, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday during our report conversation, but one of my first clients was a woman named Sandria who was being evicted because her grandson had been arrested blocks away from her apartment. He didn't live there, but when he thought about his source of stability in that moment, this 17-year-old young man, shared with the officers her address because they asked him for an address. And that's what got written down on the police report. Based on nothing else than that one statement, she ended up having to fight for her home for 8 months in a legal proceeding. They were trying to kick out this grandmother from her home who had been there for 20 years off of a case that there hadn't even been a conviction yet. And I saw cases like this over and over and over again, and they broke my heart because what they made me think about was the incredible strength of the black woman in my life, the women in my life, who I relied upon, who I saw other family members relied upon, and I thought, if that strength gets weakened, where will we all be? I saw that women were under attack. I ended up I transitioned my practice shortly after actually reading Michelle Alexander's book, where she talks about building movements, that we need to all be part of creating an ecosystem for a movement to take place, to facilitate the leadership and the voice, the collective voice of directly impacted people. And I thought, how can I do more of that? So I transitioned my practice, but I had this question, what is mass incarceration doing to women? I didn't see that in the narrative. I didn't see that in the books, the literature, the headlines. I felt like this was, as the young sister said earlier, a conversation that was happening that was about men all the time. And yet I saw women under attack, women incarcerated at rates that exceed how we're incarcerating men. And yet the conversation was about men over and over again. And I went at around this time to go to my grandmother's house, where I joke now because I was a little nervous because she was like, "Why ain't you got no job? We sent you to law school. You quit your job in Harlem and came out here and asked me a bunch of questions." But that's exactly what I did. I went to her kitchen table and asked her questions because I was literally haunted by the stories that I saw in the women who I represent. And she said, I asked her, I said, "Grandma, I want to know how Grandmom did it." Grandmom was, we called her Grandmom, but her name was Essie Bailey, and ESSIE, which is where the name Essie Justice Group comes from. And Grandmom passed away a month after I took Sandria's case in Harlem, so she lived a very long life. But she grew up, she's my great-grandmother, she grew up on a sharecropping farm in Louisiana, moved from south to west in the Great Migration, like so many women of her age, generation, and race, and was trying to flee Jim Crow, racism, poverty, sexism, and she came to California and found not a lot different, but nonetheless she was able to build this foundation that myself and my family members could stand on. And I grew up hearing her stories, but I wanted to know how she did it, because to me there's not much difference between the types of obstacles facing women today, incarcerated, formerly incarcerated women, women with incarcerated loved ones, and those that she was facing. And my grandmother, she turned around from the kitchen sink, I'll never forget, and she looked at me like I was asking the most obvious question in the world, and she said, "Baby, she had sisters." And that was it. That moment was deposited into my lap, our ancestorial strategy, the way that we liberate ourselves and each other is through sisterhood, is through community. Mass incarceration has produced mass isolation. The purpose of incarceration is to separate us from one another. Bars and concrete, shame, stigma, and blame keep us silent, keep us separate, and break our power. And so the way that we build power
is by coming together. The way that we resist is by building sisterhood. And so I believe in the work of the council. This is convenings and committing to building community is incredibly important because that is from where we draw our courage, and this vicious system requires all of our courage. You know, isolation is deadly. One of the things that we have been trying to say at ESSE for a while, but trying to figure out how to, and it's been difficult, is how to talk about, how to explain how deadly isolation can be. And I don't want to go too much longer, but I do want to just point out that we have this report, and we try to bring as many copies for people here as possible. But please, Andrea, will you raise your hand? Here's Andrea and Cheryl. Will you raise your hand? They will, if you go up to them, they will give you a copy of the report if there still is one and you don't have one yet. Otherwise, go to becauseshe'spowerful.org, in which we collected the stories as well as the experiences of women with incarcerated loved ones from thousands across the country and found some really, really startling, maybe not startling, but things that we hope will help us uplift the scope of the problem, but also where the solutions really are. And there are many people, the council was a huge part, many organizations in this room, Song and others, who collaborated, who went to jails, who went to prisons, who went to go and do outreach to make sure that women's voices were heard and were uplifted in this report. The last thing I just want to say, this morning I was reading the words of our great foremother Ella Baker, who in 1970 she observed this thing that I thought was really important. She said the movement of the 1950s and 60s was carried largely by women. How many made a conscious decision on the basis of the larger goals? How many on the basis of a habit pattern? I don't know. But it's true that the number of women who carried the movement is much larger than that of men. Social movements happen when women come together. Change happens when women come together. And we will build this sisterhood of this council until all of our sisters are free. We are going to build together until all our sisters are free. We will commit to studying movements and the strategies of our foremothers, am I right, until all of our sisters are free. We will build creatively, make joy, beauty, family, show hope until all our sisters are free from bars and cells of incarceration and free from the pain and trauma of having a loved one in the system. Until all of our sisters are free. Now, thank you. Now, I would very much like to invite some extraordinary individuals to the stage. I'm really excited to introduce you to our panel. Maureen Grisey, I'm going to just actually ask the panelists just to come forward now so that we can kind of start to assemble, and then I'll introduce each one of them to you. Okay. So one of the things that that I had the pleasure of getting to see again in speaking with each of these panelists a little bit in the last couple of days is just the way in which, despite the fact that all of our experiences are different, the people who we love on the inside, our own experience about whether or not we've been inside or not, they all are different. There are certain pieces of this, both the harm, both how it's harmed and changed us in ways that have been painful, but also the way in which we've been able to be resilient. There are ways that overlap. And so I want to make sure that, as you're listening to each one of these testimonies, that you're also listening for the places of overlap with your own stories and your own experiences, and perhaps find an opportunity to make a connection at some point throughout the day around some of that. So the first couple of people I want to introduce is Catherine Moore and Christopher Moore. You can just wave. Catherine and Christopher Moore are the mother and brother of Justine Moore, or lovingly known as Taz. Hey, Taz. Co-founding member of the council, who served 17 years of a 20-year sentence. And Ms. Moore, Taz's mother, is from Nashville, North Carolina, and works at Hunter Hill Nursing Home and Rehabilitation Center. Ms. Moore is, at the age of 74, still goes to work every day. And she is the only girl of 7 brothers. And her work ethics and that is where her work ethics and her toughness come from. Christopher Moore, upon reflecting on his sister's incarceration, said, I watched you and all your friends go to jail, and I'm not going to do that. I have to be the change. So we're going to hear a little bit from both of them in a second. I want to introduce the entire panel, and then I'd like everyone on the panel to respond to the question, how has incarceration changed your life? That's a very specific question, because I think that, or a question that's articulated that way, because so often the assumption is that unless you've been incarcerated, incarceration hasn't changed, hasn't impacted you. Maureen Grisset, are you here? Okay, can you wave? This is Maureen Grisset. Maureen is the director of the Can Do Foundation Guardian Angel program. She is the mother of an incarcerated daughter who is incarcerated in Minnesota. And she advocates for 5 women who are seeking or who have received executive clemency. She has nearly 30 years of experience as a registered nurse and is board certified in case management. Her professional experience has served her well in advocating for women and girls, and that dovetails right into the mission of the Can Do Foundation. Dr. Dolores Good. You all know her by now. Andrea's mama is a retired associate professor of psychology, public policy, family studies, and a child and family psychotherapist. She has done all of this at both Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and at the Dr. Solomon Fuller Mental Health Center, Division of Psychiatry at the Boston University School of Medicine. She is also, as I said, the mother of Andrea James, which is an achievement in itself. Tyshante Williams. I had some moment to talk to him yesterday, and is an incredibly inspiring young man. His mother was incarcerated from the age of 7 to 17, and he is looking forward to sharing with all of us the process of reconnecting and the impact on relationships. Thank you, Ty. Ayanna Auberg. Ayanna is 24 years old and living in Boston. She's the co-founder of an organization called Sisters Unchained, a group of young women who have had or do have an incarcerated parent. She is also a member of Young Abolitionists, all right, and her father was incarcerated for 17 years until he came home during her senior year of high school. And Adrienne Bernard. There you are. Ms. Bernard lives in Humboldt, Texas. She's originally from New Orleans and is a minister, an ordained pastor, and is a formerly incarcerated woman with a son who is currently serving a life sentence. She has a compelling story of sacrifice to bring exposure to the incarceration of other sisters, in particular her advocacy for Danielle Metz when she became an advocate for her, and is looking forward to sharing more of that story. So we don't have a lot of time, but what we're going to do, and we had this request yesterday for people to come to the mic, is one by one or group by group, we're going to have everyone respond to the question of how has incarceration changed your life? And following that, each person has decided that they want to share one specific aspect of this in relationship to their story. So there's a number of ways that incarceration impacts families and women with incarcerated loved ones. And so what I'd like to start with is actually the impact on the mental health and emotional health. And so I'm going to invite Dr. Good to come up share how has incarceration impacted your life, Dr. Good, and also tell us a little bit about mental health strain. And as you come up, I just want to share with the audience that we found in our study that 86% of women, and you can come on up when you're comfortable, 86% of women who responded to the Because She's Powerful survey reported that the strain in their emotional and mental health was significant or extreme. And that number jumps to 94% when women have partners who are incarcerated. So if you'd share a little bit about that, please.
Thank you, Gina. I'm just delighted to be with all of you. And I feel the support that you give Andrea, and her team is amazing, and I thank every one of you. And before I give you just a brief account, because we don't have much time, I do want to say to Andrea, wherever you are, and to my granddaughter, Ariel, my son-in-law, John James, and my grandson, John. We as a family have discussed these things before. No surprises from Mom. You've heard it all. But there was a statistic on page 11 of the conference book, Because She's Powerful. It caught my eye. And it reads, and I quote, "In the current age of mass incarceration, at least 1 in 4 women has an incarcerated loved one." Well, that statistic blows my mind. I didn't know the demographic was that high. But from my experience, both as a clinician and an administrator in the field of mental health, it does press on your emotions. And I had several different experiences throughout this process, one of which that influenced me was visiting Andrea in Danbury's minimum security facility, because I heard from women and their family members what they were going through, and it resonated with me. First, I consider myself fortunate because help came for me from within the family and from among friends almost immediately. The day after Andrea entered Danbury, a woman lawyer friend of hers came to my house, and we sat in my kitchen, and she helped me with papers that have to be filled out that I was not familiar with, one of which was my letter to a judge in the family court regarding my granddaughter. I wrote to him, and I said to him what this experience, this shattering, disrupting experience, means to me. And it somehow reached him and touched him. And one of his decisions was to grant me and my husband, Matthew Good, who is sitting right here, has gone through this with us, is my rock and my foundation and my strength. He said to me, "I am granting you, Matthew and Dolores, rather than another circumstance that another person in the family thought was possible, I am granting the two of you temporary custody of your 12-year-old granddaughter." Now, the interesting circumstance about our family is that we live together in an old Victorian house, a 13-room Victorian house that is a two-family house, that is the home of my childhood, inherited from my parents. So we are all together up and down the stairs, which is convenient. When I visited Andrea in Danbury, I heard from women who lived in circumstances, when you think about socioeconomic class circumstances, if you have to use that term, that were situations of deprivation. That was not our situation. We are not a wealthy family, but we are not disadvantaged in a socioeconomic way, and certainly not educationally. So I consider that we had an advantage to begin with. Family support, means, and so forth. Now I'm going to tell you quickly about one of the experiences that I had. My husband and I live on Martha's Vineyard Island about 7 months out of the year, during the summer and into the fall. And so my friends on Martha's Vineyard Island, where President Obama and Michelle Obama vacation, are also families of some means. I have always had the intention of disclosure throughout my life. And so I approached my friends on Martha's Vineyard for letters of support for Andrea. And they responded immediately. Now, they had different dispositions. Some people were surprised, first of all, that I was making that particular request. And others just spontaneously said yes immediately. And so, under that circumstance, I received support. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but support immediately. The other point that I want to make is that within our family, we do talk with each other, and that's important. What I found when I visited Andrea is that there were people in other circumstances, particularly socioeconomic and educational background. And as I listened to the pain for them of being thus involved in incarceration with a loved one, my pain diminished because I had these supports. And so that's what's important, that when you have support, you can get through this. But I'm going to be frank with you. At certain points, I was like a crazy woman. Andrea knows that. One of the things that I know is a symptom with regard to stress is that I would wake up in the middle of the night, not expecting this, sobbing, uncontrollably. And so I'd have to get myself together about that. Each of us has to deal with the situation from an emotional point of view according to the strength that we have that comes from our individual circumstances. So any pain that I experienced, I also had a solution. And I kept saying to myself, I am thankful for this, and I could take the next step forward.
Thank you, Dr. Good. Thank you. So I'm just incredibly inspired by the courage that it did take to reach out to friends in that circumstance. It's not something that everyone feels like they can do. And to take that, to go out of your way to do that in the midst of so much pain and draw support from those places is incredible. There's other times in history where black women had their children pulled away from their arms legally, and where we were in so many similar situations having to pay for freedom. And I just think it's important. These links are really critical to always be making. You know, I'd like to talk hear a little bit about the financial impact, and I'm going to bring Maureen Grisset up, who is just a phenomenal advocate, to talk a little bit about how incarceration changed your life, Maureen, and tell us a bit about what that look. Where are you? Tell us a bit about what the financial impact looked like.
Thank you. It's such an honor and privilege to be among the council, and thank you for bringing us together as a community today. Like you said, a community is very important. Just got to echo everything that you said. Okay. Like Gina said, I'm the mother of a daughter who has been incarcerated since she was 19 years old. She is serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. She's presently at Waseca, Minnesota. The advocacy work that I do with Can Do and with the council, it all started with her incarceration. It all has to do with supporting her, loving her unconditionally, and setting her up for success. And that's the same, I feel the same about all of the women that are inside and that have come outside, is setting them up for success, loving them unconditionally, and giving them as much support as I can. When she was arrested, she was a student in the honors program at Kansas State University. She was attending on a prestigious scholarship through the university, and she was majoring in biology with a pre-med emphasis, with aspirations of being an orthopedic surgeon. Like so many stories we know, her crime had a man with a history of violence that she was involved with in her past, and like so many women, well, you know, we don't hear about too many men. Like Amy's Amy's pointed this out to me, and I'd never really thought about it, and she pointed this out to me, is men typically don't go to prison for the actions of a woman in their life. But so many of our sisters go to prison because of the men in their lives who negatively impact their lives. So, our family had never had anybody, we'd never had anybody in our family that had ever been incarcerated, arrested, been involved at all in the criminal justice system. So we felt very alone. And come to find out, we found a wonderful community. Within our community, within our church, and amongst the women of the council and through Can Do Clemency. So I got to thank you all again. I will tell you, my husband and I are both college educated. We served as Army officers for over 10 years. We came out of school with no student debt. My husband's been a federal employee for 34 years. He's very looking forward to retirement, but he's working longer than he wanted to because of the financial costs of incarceration. So let me tell you a little bit more about what it costs. Our daughter started with a public defender the first month of her incarceration, and we all know that it's hit or miss on the quality of a public defender that you get. She was terrible. Come to find out, we didn't know that our daughter had been federally indicted or that anybody was going to come visit her on her federal indictment until we heard it on the news. She didn't show up to court on time. She wouldn't return my calls. And has anybody ever called from a jail or prison or been able to leave a voicemail for anybody? Okay. She had nobody answering her phone. I would have to leave a voicemail. Anybody called from that county jail? They got voicemail. They couldn't talk to their attorney. So, once she was federally indicted, we hired a private attorney on the advice of a good friend of ours who was a criminal defense attorney, one of the best in Kansas, that he wouldn't take her case because of the conflict of interest of our friendship. He recommended a great attorney firm in Overland Park, Kansas, and we went to consult with them, and they told us that it would probably cost a minimum of $60,000 for them to represent her. So we were just kind of blown away. Just like Andrea's family, we are not impoverished. We are not socioeconomically disadvantaged. We're both professionals. We're doing okay financially. Even after all these costs, we're doing okay financially. But we were still flabbergasted. They said if we went to trial, it'd probably cost us about $1 million. And mind you, she was in jail on $1 million bond. We didn't have it. Who has $100,000 hanging around in their bank account? Yeah, we didn't. Hardly anybody does. So she had to stay incarcerated. We asked the attorney, how do people pay for this? Well, you've got a house. You've got a farm. If you've got equity built up in that, go ahead and take out a second mortgage. So that's what we did. We took out a second mortgage on our home, and we'll be paying on that second mortgage for a really long time. We're 5.5 years in now, and we're still paying on that. It'll be a while before we get that paid off. Then there's the court fees. And we know that if you show up to federal prison and you haven't paid your court fees, you're already in the hole. Okay? Student loans. Okay, my daughter, we all know what the cost of college is. Even that prestigious scholarship did not cover all of the costs of college. So we're now paying her student loans. Our daughter, I've got brilliant kids. I'm very blessed to have brilliant kids. She was able to go to school full-time, and she also worked 2 part-time jobs, and they'll both have her back because she was such a hard worker, a great leader, just a really good employee. I already talked about her losing that prestigious scholarship. And as I said, I wanted to set her up for success. Her father and I wanted to set her up for success. So she is now a junior in sociology through Colorado State University, Pueblo, and we've taken all its college costs on. Her admissions fee, her tuition, her books, and thank God we had a little bit of money saved up for college for all of our kids. Not everybody has that. Like I said, our retirement plans are a lot less stable with that second mortgage hanging over our head. Then we have another part of the prison industrial complex, the phone calls, the emails, the commissary, and the costs associated with that. Now let's talk a little bit about visitation. Okay, when she was sent to federal prison, mind you, we live in Kansas. When she was sent to federal prison, there was this new prison, this new women's prison in Alabama, Aliceville, Alabama. Even though the closest prison was in Waseca, Minnesota, which is 500 miles from us, mind you, that's the closest. It's 8 hours away. Even though that's what we asked for in her pre-sentencing report, that she be as close to home, she got sent to Aliceville, Alabama, over 700 miles away. Now, for those of you that are from the Northeast, y'all remember BOP had to fill up that prison. So they started sending women from there, and when she showed up there were only 200 women there. So there's the visitation costs. We would have to drive 711 miles to Aliceville, Alabama. I have 3 other children, so in order to maintain our family ties and community ties, we took the whole family. Okay. We live a pretty Spartan lifestyle. We have old cars. We live in an old house. So we'd have to get a rental car. You got the fuel. Okay. Because you can't fly into Aliceville, Alabama. Okay. Let's see what else. There was the cost of meals. There was the cost of food. we could easily spend $750 to $1,000 every time we went to visit her. And because it was so far away, you know, we would have to also take off of work. Okay. Restitution. She has $75,000 in restitution. She works for Unicor as the head mechanic there at the textile factory. She makes 91 cents an hour. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good in federal prison. But how the heck are you going to pay down that restitution at 91 cents an hour? It's ridiculous. It's slavery. It is prison slavery. And it is unacceptable. There is no reason why slavery should be okay in the land of the free. And that needs to get changed. Okay. So when she re-enters, her income potential is going to be significantly diminished. She won't be re-entering until 2030. That's as soon as she can get out. She went in when she was 19. She will be 37 years old. She's darn near losing all of her childbearing years. So that's something that we as grandparents lose. That's something she as a woman also is going to lose. Okay. So how did incarceration change my life? It's been a really difficult process. If it wasn't for my faith, my family, my community locally, this community here, I would not have been able to make it through it. Very early during her incarceration, I was absolutely overwhelmed. I could not believe the aberrance of her behavior. This isn't who she is. We're not the sum of the worst thing that we've ever done. I took this weight off my shoulder and I laid it at the base of the cross. And I said, God, this is too big for me to handle. Just like you said, I was sobbing uncontrollably. I said, God, give me strength. Give my family strength. Give my daughter strength. So that's what we did. We focused on the positive. There is some reason the Lord brought this into our life. And I've got to turn it over into something positive. And the way I did that is through this community. Through my sisters and brothers in Can Do, my sisters in the council. I couldn't do it without you all. I'm going to change the things that I can't accept. And I thank you all.
So I'm going to move along to Christopher and Miss Moore, if you two would come up. How has incarceration changed your life? And if you don't mind talking a little bit about the reentry process. Families, women specifically, play an incredibly important role in making sure that when people come home, they are brought home with love and care and reintegrated into community and family in the way that they should be, with dignity and with the things that they need. And I think that is something that so often doesn't get emphasized or uplifted, and how complicated that is. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about what your process was going through the family process of reentry.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. But I'm Christopher Moore, Taz's little brother, as everybody knows me. My sister and I were very close before she went in. You know, you're going to make me cry. Stop. You know, we were tight. Everyone thought she was my mother. That's how close we were.
True.
My mother used to get mad. She would have arguments. I birthed him, not you. This is my son. Stop.
True.
Yeah. But we were very close-knit family. We didn't have much growing up. We had each other, and my mother taught us to look out for each other. No matter what you're going through, how angry you are with that person. You know, you have your fights, you have your squabbles, but your family, you have to be there. So when my sister was incarcerated, it hurt me a lot. You know, she wasn't only incarcerated, I was incarcerated as well. A big part of me was gone. You know, you're removing a person that you see every day, that you interact with, that you share everything with, and they're gone. So it's a blow. But as far as her getting out, you don't realize how when someone's incarcerated, they're not in the world. They're not up on technology, what's going on, how things is progressing. You know, they miss out on a lot. You know, you try to keep them abreast of what's going on, but once they come out, you're starting from ground zero. You have to get them IDs. You have to keep them abreast of technology. You have to help them get jobs. She went into a halfway house. So for her to get to job interviews, to go to get a driver's license, it felt like I had a kid. You know, you go through so much. I have to get an ID. I have to get her clothes. I have to get her shoes. I have to get her a bra. I'm shopping for bras. I'm shopping for shoes. It's a lot of work, you know. But it didn't affect me. People kept asking, well, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do I not do it? That's my sister. That's my family. You know, it's not a burden. This is, to me, what you're supposed to do. And if no one else will help her, I'll be there, because that's how my mother raised us. And the aspect of, I feel that we should have more programs helping the families adjust to people coming out of prison. To show them that, all right, this is what they need when they come out. You know, simple things like a driver's license, ID. You know, she was incarcerated for 17 years. They want proof of this, proof of that, but how do you get it? You know, how do you get housing for her to come out? And for her coming to my house, they have to interview you, they have to come to your house, they have to go over your every little detail, you have to have a phone. It's just so much to go through that it can be overwhelming. So I feel that we should have some kind of program, some kind of anything to help the families of the people coming home as well. Because you want them to ease into it. You know, there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of things that they need. So we should have some type of programs for that. I don't want to talk too long.
Chris was involved with most of that because I lived in North Carolina, and he had to do all the buying, like he said. But when I could afford to give money, I gave money for him to help out to do that. But I wished I was there, but I couldn't be there as much as I wanted to, but whenever I could, I was there. Just like when it was time for her to get out, I made way to get up there when she came out. So she had to live in New York. She couldn't come down to North Carolina. So like I said, he did most of it, which I appreciate him. I appreciate him very much for taking over the part that I should have been able to do, but since I wasn't, I give him thanks for that. And I'd like to thank everybody for inviting me up here, and so I can speak that little piece and hope that somewhere down the line that other mothers that couldn't be up there, like Chris was or like I was, I couldn't be up there. I'm hoping that you had someone that could stand by them when they get out and process ways of getting back into life, that, you know, we all just appreciate that someone there for you when you're not able to be there. Thank you.
Could I just say one more thing? I just want to say to the people in the council, thank you to everyone. I was locked up with my sister. Every time I went to Danbury, it was just love. Yeah. I mean, there's people that I met that they still know me, they still ask about me. Oh, where's your brother? How's your brother? And you feel like a family. And that's something I never really, until I came, this is my first time coming. And to see it, to see y'all in action, to see the progress you made, to see everything that you're doing, it's amazing. And I just want to say congratulations. Please keep up the work and just keep doing it. And I want to say I love my sister.
Wow. I'm really in awe of just how much they try to break us and our families, and we don't let them. We don't let them do that. And I'm just in awe of the labor of love that all of you all of us are manifesting every day. I would like to touch on two final topics. One is the experience of having a parent incarcerated. And we're going to hear from Ty and Ayana about this experience, and if both of you don't mind coming up, and then we'll end on advocacy. Please share, how has incarceration impacted your life? And tell us about the unique experience of having a parent inside.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ayana. Very blessed to be here right now. So the question is, how has incarceration changed my life? And I feel like at first, because I was born into the circumstance, like I just had to learn to live with it. So my father was incarcerated, and the first time I met him was in jail. My mom was 17 when she had me, so I feel like it more so changed her life in the beginning than it changed mine because I was born into it. So, you know, I'm meeting him and building a relationship and a bond with him in an institution, and like that's really all I knew. The only thing that changed is the facility, going to different facilities in different towns, different states, traveling far, everything that you guys probably already know. Yeah, and so when I would visit him, I would just notice two things. One is just the strength and love in the room, which is something that I always like held on to. You know, seeing a mom just like touch her son's hand, or like kids, you know, trying to like run around, but they couldn't really, they had to sit still and just so anxious and stuff. And then looking my dad in his eyes and trying to like carry a conversation with him, but I didn't really know how to because I just was so anxious. And also like, it was just like, there wasn't a lot of like room for intimacy and privacy. You know, you're just like kind of all crammed in one room. And just looking around, no lie, like everyone was my skin complexion or darker, but I didn't put that together. You know, I'm at a young age. It's just like memories that I have is like everyone in that room, and specifically in rural New Jersey, Ferriton, they were all black. And so I don't know, that just speaks volumes to me, and that's just something that I've held on to. And, you know, when I navigated into different spaces and, you know, people decided to, you know, teach me things about racism, that's, you know, kind of when I started to like put those memories together. But I really think that my life started to change actually when he got out of prison and like really getting to know him. So he got out when I was a senior in high school, a couple months before I graduated. Obviously was still on probation, and, you know, working with his curfew and stuff and just trying to like get to know him throughout the day. And then supporting him in court, I think, is something that like really stood out to me too, because basically he violated his probation, and so he wanted me to come with him to court. And this moment for me, I always share because it really made my blood boil, and it was definitely an experience where I really felt like I didn't have any power. And basically they were in the courtroom, and I think it was a DA. She was just saying like, you know, like he shouldn't be able to work. He shouldn't have a job because he was like, they placed him in like as a delivery guy at a pizza shop. And she was just saying like, I don't want him delivering pizzas to my door. Like, he could put my son in danger. He's a danger to society. And just knowing everything about my dad and like trying to build a relationship since like, you know, I was a toddler until now, and just like, you know, he has so much drive, so much ambition, so much compassion, so much love for the world. And for someone who doesn't know him, and just based off of her like irrational fear, her racial biases, like, and she just had all of that power to say that and just state that and like have that be mandated on his life. And like me sitting there wanting to just like go up there and like defend him and like, you know, really like say all of the truth that I know about him, and like not being able to do that, like that was definitely a defining moment for me. And like, you know, trying to figure out, okay, like what do I do with this anger? And like, my father was just so used to it, like, you know what I mean? Like, he just shook it off, but like that really like aggravated me. And so whatever, fast forward, and I think just like, you know, he passed away, and like just trying to like, you know, come to terms with like grieving, and you know, what does that really mean? And like, especially for my family, and I talk about this a lot, like we're all grieving, like, you know, from the point that our loved one is put into that facility, and if they do come out, like, even after, like, you know, we're still struggling and trying to build a relationship. And, like, he always, when I was, like, reading his letters and stuff, he would just state, like, you know, like, I feel like a breathing corpse. And so I think right now I'm at a point in my life where I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, you know, what's more important, like, you know, his freedom or, like, him being inside. And I know that they were trying to get him to be locked up again. So it's just like, you know, coming to terms with that death. But I feel like that shouldn't have happened. Like, he should have been able to, like, and everyone be able to, like, you know, live that life, you know, of freedom without, you know, struggling with displacement, incarceration, and things like that. So we're here. Yeah.
Incarceration affected my life when the first time, I think I was probably 5 years old, probably 4 or 5, when my father got arrested in Florida. I remember that. My mother was there as well, and then but for that, I think that affected my little brother a little bit more than me, because I think he was recently born at the time, probably wasn't even one. And I remember the police coming, knocking on the door where we were staying at. I got my mom, she went out there, you know. But anyways, they had me go, you know. I seen him, the cuffs and the little van thing. And he, you know, he was like, he looked me in my face, he was like, son, you know, you're the man of the house now. You have to take care of your mom, your brother. And at that time, I'm just like, you know, well, all right, I'm the man now, you know. But I didn't really get it until I think it was a couple days, probably weeks after that. We had tried to go and visit him, me and my mother, but I wasn't allowed for some reason, so I had to wait anyways. And then later on in life, when I was 7 years old, my mother was incarcerated. She did 10 years, and that I was basically more understanding at that time of, you know, like what was going on, because me and my mother was close, very close at that time, very close, you know. It was just, you know, I loved her extremely, you know. Me and my brother, it was a good relationship anyways. But I remember her turning herself in. But before she went and turned herself in, she said that she would come back, but she never came back. So, you know, I guess off of that, some feelings of abandonment was brought up, you know. And later on, when she came home, she said that she really did think that she was going to come back that day. But, you know, it turns out she didn't. So that's just what I had to deal with. But but yeah, so, you know, but I had my little brother to look after, and we weren't in a bad home. We was with my aunt and my uncle. They took very good care of us, but, you know, it's never the same. You know, I had a good upbringing, but it's never the same when it's not your parents, you know. And that's what it is. And when she came home, actually, when my father first came home as well, we had tried to build a relationship, but he's from the Bahamas originally, so they deported him. So, but that, I felt that affected my little brother more than it affected me, because, like I said, my brother was recently born at the time. So, you know, for him to come home and then have a little bit of a connection, and then for him to just be like shipped off, you know, it's like, again, really. But when my mom came home, that was a little tough for me, because of, like I said before, actually, it was tough because I remember this vividly. The crime that she got convicted and, you know, sent to prison for, I remember the night I told her, don't leave the house. You know, I was a 7-year-old. I told her, don't leave the house. I don't want you to go. Stay here with us. But she left anyway. And off of that, you know, one decision, she spent 10 years of her life incarcerated, 10 years without her, me and my brother. But when she came home, I think because of, you know, her telling me that she was going to come back that day and not listening to me, it was a little bit of a rebellious thing between me and her. But I've always loved my mother. It's, you know, it's just sometimes you're young and you go through things. But I'll tell you this, I know she loved me regardless, you know, until infinity. It was just really tough. Just, you know, having to deal with that. I'm not really talkative myself, but I think that happened because of her going away. Because before she went, like I said, we had a good relationship. So with her going away, is like my outlet for, you know, to vent was taken away. Thank you. And and you know, I'm sorry. And you know, but we're working. I'm working on being more of an open person now with her. Like, it's part of the reason why I'm here, you know. And it's like he said before, this is my first time here, and the community and the support you guys have for each other and everybody is like phenomenal. And I'm just proud for this. Like, I'm thankful because I guess growing up, I felt alone, isolated, and I didn't really want to show my hurt because of my brother. You know, wanted to stay strong for him. So I just basically shut all my emotions down. But now I'm getting better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ty. We are all so proud of you and Ayanna and all the young people in this space. We just hear another round of love. So, okay, we gotta really move the program, I'm being told. And so we actually have the very last, we got time for Miss Bernard, is that right? Just one last but on fire person for justice who we want to hear from, because all of this love translates into some powerful advocacy, and that is just what Ms. Bernard has dedicated herself to. So if you could please come up and just share just a little bit, just leave us with a little bit, and close us out. Thank you.
God bless each and every one of you. How many know the power of one? The Bible declares that one can chase 1,000, but two, how many you think two can do? Two can chase 10,000. So I applaud you all today for the work that you're doing. I tell you, if it had not been for the advocacy groups that are all scattered around this nation, none of us would be here today. none of us would be here today. I thank God for Andrea. I tell you, I thank God for her, because had she not mentioned my sister's name in a luncheon that she was in with one of Obama's staff, Valerie Jarrett, they had set on the letter that the U.S. attorney had written in 2015. But Andrea got up and said, why is Danielle Ness still sitting in prison? When the U.S. attorney had written a letter for President Obama to release her, a woman that was sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 20 years. I'm a formerly incarcerated woman, but I deferred my story where my sister's story could be highlighted, and I prayed consistently that my mother would be alive to witness her freedom. And I tell you, my mother lived September 2016, she lived and she was at the airport to see Danielle fly home from Dublin, California after 23 years of incarceration. And she was able to witness that. I thank God for Amy. Me and her had some rounds about Danielle. But guess what? She did not defer. She kept putting her picture and holding it in front of the White House. These women need to be applauded for the work that they are doing each and every day, not for themselves, but for others. I want to leave you all with one scripture, and that scripture is in Proverbs 13 and 12. It says, hope deferred maketh the heart sick. Hope deferred maketh the heart sick. Many of you all have been sick because you have been in prison. But I want you to know today that the Bible declares, but when the desire, your desire to be free, cometh, it is a tree of life. All of you all here are trees of life. Trees of life. Trees of life. I thank God for my high school friend, Denise the Quaker, that I went to school with in high school. She met my little sister in Dublin, and she couldn't believe that was Adrian's little sister. But I thank God after 38 years, Denise's friend. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Andrea. Thank the council. I have been re-energized to get back on the battlefield. Even though the enemy stuffed out my granddaughter's life. 20 years ago, my daughter was murdered. But 4 days before my daughter was murdered, my son was sentenced. He murdered someone on a Thursday, and that Friday, my daughter was murdered. She's crying out to help me to get a lawyer to save her brother, not knowing that her life was going to be snuffed out 4 days later. So I lost both kids. But guess what? My son knew that I was advocating for Danielle. And I prayed that I might not be living to see him free, but Danielle is going to have to be his voice now. God bless you all. I love you with the love of God. Continue to stand on the front line. Continue to advocate for women, not just for women and girls, but all of our people, all of our loved ones that have been denied our rights, that have been denied freedom. Justice will prevail because God hasn't forgotten about them.
And may the church say, all right, we got to go. Thank you for coming to this family panel. I'm handing it back over to Sister Andrea. Thank you all.
Thank you all. I'm sorry to the workshop presenters. We honor you and we honor your time, but this is what needs to happen at the time it needs to happen. Janae, I encourage you all to find your workshops. Come on, sis. We got to do this very quickly. Janae is just going to tell you this is heavy stuff, people. We need to have a space, and Janae has created that space. And as soon as she's done, please go to the workshops. The presenters are waiting in those spaces, please.
Peace, y'all. So all of this, I know it's a lot we have to take in. And so Lucille Clifton said, come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. And so we've created a space. Room 525 is a healing space. If you need a layout, if you need to take a walk, if you need to cry, if you just need some space to release, because we're taking in a lot of information. We're feeling a lot. 525 is available. You can sign up for walks, for some Reiki, for some chakra healing, whatever you need. Take some time out for yourself. Get well. 525 will be there from 10 to 1 and 3 to 6. Thank you.
One more thing, the participatory defense workshop will be held now in room 3, studio 306 on the 3rd floor. Participatory defense 306, 3rd floor for those who would like to come to that workshop. Thank you.